House at Hanging. It's Omar, Tom, still hanging,
Still here.
still housing. There's nothing to talk about this week, though, so this is going to be a very, very short episode, right?
Yeah, there's been zero big revelations this past Friday in the real estate world. Nothing.
I mean, the NAR, they issued a ruling that just crushed all the hopes and dreams of bad agents sucking on the teat of a crazy market.
I cried a lot, hence the tissues.
Why'd you put them on my side? Well, actually, I'll need them for by the end of this is over.
Yeah.
But
They're sad tissues.
It's gonna be good. So we got a week 6. So we're back. We're still here. We don't have a guest this week. Next week, I think we do have a guest scheduled though.
We may.
So secret, if we do, we're gonna drop some. I guess maybe we should start an Instagram page from the House at Hanging thing and give a little bit behind the scenes.
We could.
It's gonna be very short and boring, but we can start dropping some hints from maybe our personal ones, personal Instagram pages.
Make a big announcement.
So we're going. Like I said, we got through the original 5. And we're going to change this format around to make it hopefully, because we looked at the stats, and most people stay 3.5 minutes, which usually is about the time that I start talking. So it's fantastic. So we're going to switch it around. I'm going to do, instead of real estate news, which we'll get into a little later, I'm going to do crazy news segment of the week.
Okay.
So the first one we're going to go over is, do you know what an iron lung is?
Yes.
So the last person, this guy named Paul Allen, just died. He was 78 years old. He spent 70 years of his life in an iron lung after a polio infection. Do you know what kind of intestinal fortitude it takes?
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I was thinking Iron Maiden. I don't know what an iron lung is.
An iron lung is like it basically is like an internal pressurized chamber.
Okay.
To keep you alive. So he laid horizontally.
Like a hyperbaric type.
Essentially,
chamber.
yeah. Like I'll show you. We'll see if we can put like a little picture of it in here.
Yeah.
But he spent 70 of his 78 years alive laying horizontally in this hyperbaric iron lung chamber.
That's like what Michael Jackson and Walt Disney slept in, right?
Maybe, but he did 70 years. I don't know. If I was to pay you, what amount of money could you do it? Because it's amazing to me the intestinal fortitude that it takes for him. Like he went to college. Mm-hmm. He went and I don't know if he was married or not, but I saw this and I was like, that's a ton of time.
So did he spend every waking hour in there?
You can't move. If you leave, you die. It's an iron lung.
Okay, so he's restricted. So
that's it.
Got it. So he had no choice.
No, it wasn't like he. I mean, if you choose that, you're a real masochist.
So his crossroad is leave the lung or die.
Yes.
Okay, so it was a scruples question.
Yeah, but at what point, I would have tapped 8.5 years into being laying horizontal. I don't have that in me.
Or maybe that's the existence that he knew, so he didn't feel like he was missing anything.
Well, it's not like he didn't get an allergy halfway through his life and learn what, if it was celiac, Kristen can't have pizza.
Yeah.
If I couldn't have pizza, I would know what real good pizza tasted like. He tasted the un-iron lung life before polio. But it's also funny how polio caused this, and we don't even think about polio anymore.
No.
So, but would you be able to do it?
Probably not. I'd feel like that existence would be boring. But again, if I didn't know any better, it's, he obviously was holding on to human interaction.
I mean, I give him a ton of credit. So, so now that we got that weird news out of the way.
Now that I'm depressed.
Yeah. Any other news?
Give me a tissue.
Any other news you want to talk about?
Do we want to jump right to the obvious?
I mean, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing with this because, here's the thing. So everybody has an opinion on, and actually, if you're watching this, you probably are in the real estate industry, or you're just hate watching us. Which, thank you. If you're not but you're probably in the industry. It's probably not for people that are looking for houses or consumers or people that don't necessarily know us. We can jump into it, and I'm going to leave this here for you because we're going to need this as we go through. Like I said in the top of this, the NAR, they issued a ruling. We're going to get into it. We're going to kind of go what it means for industry people, what it means to buyers, what are things that people should consider now. But I also don't want to take, this is advice from 2 idiots that don't know what's going on. And honestly, if anybody tells you they know what's going on, they don't. Yeah. They don't really know.
A lot of what you're seeing right now is speculation.
It's fear.
everything that's been on the news reports, it's all clickbait is what it is. It's just things to get rating, things that the media right now is gaslighting everybody.
What gets ratings? It's always fear, right?
Yeah.
Like it's never like, hey, everything's peaceful. And
Negativity.
panic. Yeah. So, well, let's get into it. So, I kind of have a rough outline, but feel free to drop in as we go here. But what does this mean for industry people? I would start with agents, then we'll kind of get into brokerages and some different things.
So the ruling that took place on Friday is that the DOJ announced that a law is going into effect where commissions are going to be decoupled. And what that means is that the sellers of a property are no longer allowed to offer a set compensation to the buyer's realtor. That is to be
no longer allowed. Like you can't do it. It's not an option.
Right. It's not allowed to be offered in like a listing showing, hey, we're going to pay XYZ% on 123 Main Street. That is being disallowed, and it hasn't been written into law yet. But that was the ruling that was released. So this has people up in arms.
Does it have to be written in the law? If it's a ruling, like it doesn't have to become a law, right? Like it's just ruled that way, and it's.
I mean, it most likely will be written in.
They'll adjust, but it's not. It's not really. It's when it happens now. It's not like it's a maybe.
Correct. Right. And now everybody's all up in arms, and when I say everybody, specifically realtors, okay, because they don't know what is happening, and there's a lot of speculation out there as to how this is going to proceed. But the thing is, there's a lot of other guidelines that still have yet to be adjusted. You know, the big thing that agents and buyers are talking about is, well, what if I don't have the money to pay a buyer's agent commission up front? And that seems to be like the hottest topic right now.
Also, if they do, like the other thing is, like, if they do have the money, do they want to pay you up front? Like, do they see the value of what you actually do?
I mean, if they want representation in one of the most important transactions they're ever going to make, I mean, it's a pretty critical scenario.
Yeah, devil's advocate, like, has the industry done a good job of informing the people of what you actually do on a buyer side?
Well, that has the industry.
Yeah, like not you. This is not a space.
It varies individual to individual.
I don't think they've done a great job as far as like what is actually done, and I think the general consensus of like outside of our little real estate bubble is that Zillow can let you into doors, and they don't understand what actually goes into a transaction.
Right.
It's not because they're dumb or don't want to. It's just the general idea is that, oh, well, real estate agents just used to open the door and let me in the house. You do a little more than that.
Sure, a lot more than that. Well, the big thing, I would say one of the most important things that a realtor does for their client is limits liabilities, limits risks from being taken advantage of by a seller. Whereas the seller's agent is going to make sure that the seller doesn't do anything, because it's very easy for sellers to do things, one, from either ignorance and not knowing any better, or two, from deliberately doing things that are ultimately going to have some sort of sabotaging effect on the buyer of said home. So the agents work with fiduciary responsibility for whatever the individual is that they're representing. So in the case of a buyer's agent, we're making sure that they're getting the appropriate inspections to make sure that they're not buying like a giant lemon, or so that they're aware of as accurate of an assessment as possible of the property that it is that they're buying. Because even if something has some flaws and has some defects, that's okay, so long as the price reflects it, okay? Two, so that the buyer, knowing these said defects, at least they're aware of it, and that's up to them having all the information to make sure that their purchase, that they're buying what they think they're buying. I would say that's probably one of the most important roles of the realtor, is making sure that that insulation, protection, and also the accurate assessment of the condition of the property is there. Because if there's some sort of hidden structural defect or some sort of, there could be like an environmental hazard or lien issues, these are things that can cost a person tens of thousands of dollars, $100,000, and just ruin somebody financially. So that's the biggest, I would say those are the biggest benefits of a home buyer working with a quality buyer's agent.
So flip it around. Like you get charged with murder, and not just the murder of like a really good joke, but like murder. You can choose who you want to represent you, or you can represent yourself, right?
Yeah, you can.
So you have that option.
You
So
do.
typically, you want somebody that's been through it before to
Right.
lead you through.
Someone with experience that is familiar with navigating those waters for sure.
I mean, I'm sure you can learn anything on YouTube now, but like if you were to get heart surgery and, you know, maybe you trust, you're like, Tom, why don't you learn how to do it? And I learned it on YouTube. you trust the person who's done that thousands of times.
Sure.
More than somebody who's just going to look it up and see how to do it because they have the experience of actually going through and doing it.
Right. You want the person that's got the muscle memory, or is part of a team that has the muscle memory, because everybody does something for the first time at some point in life, but there are certain things that shouldn't be done by themselves. You know, you get that newly licensed family member that, of course, you want to help and support your friends, your family members, you know, anybody that's in your, you know, your personal and your social circle. But you want to make sure that you don't get burnt in the process of helping out that person. So I think you're going to see things like mentorships become more enforced. I think teams are really going to flourish. So when you have that new agent, that they're not just a new sole agent with nobody to lean on if they, you know,
it's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher to break into the industry. I have a couple just random thoughts that we can go through as different points from the industry and then from people. But it's definitely going to be tougher to break in to the industry because, like most people, when they break in, they're buyers. You're a buyer's agent because it's the easiest thing to gather onto. They don't typically pay. They don't typically pay you up front. Right. They pay after the transaction, and typically it's paid out by the seller's broker to whatever the agreed upon commission was.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have to show instant value in something that you don't necessarily know yet. Like it's your first one, you got to show instant value. The best way to do that is to connect with a team and build that team value and like kind of leverage the team value into yourself.
Sure.
As you're building out to it. So.
And I think these like part-time agents, the unavailable agents. I mean, how many times we get calls from people say, oh, my realtor's too busy, can you show me the house? We're not going to dive into the problems with that statement right there, but I think what's going to happen now is if somebody is selecting and negotiating a rate for the job, they're going to think twice about that agent that's just never around for a minute. Why would you select and choose that person that just isn't there for you? I think it is going to clean up the industry. I think it is going to weed out the less quality agents for sure, because it's with this, if people now know that there's going to be a line item for the cost of the of whatever it is that they're paying for their buyer's agent, they're going to be a lot more selective of it for sure. So I think it's going to be good news for good agents and bad news for bad agents.
And I think it's going to be bad news for not even bad agents, like bad agents, yes, but also new or learning agents are going to have a tougher time.
Unless they have a proper support staff.
I have a couple thoughts that I want to just list. I listed these out, and they're just random thoughts on this process, and you feel free to drop any kind of comment to it. So some things that buyer needs to consider now is government loans and what happens to them. Because in certain sections, certain loans, you can't really roll in the cost. So that cost is going to have to go there. What happens to them, the VA, FHA loans?
So VA specifically, one of the terms of a VA mortgage is that the buyer, the veteran, is not allowed to pay for an agent's fee. So that presents a huge problem now that there's listings out there that are offering zero commissions towards the buyer's agents. It's a massive problem. It's going to make it so that that parties using a VA loan may potentially face being unrepresented, or if they want to go directly to the listing agent who's being paid for by the seller. So there is a strong possibility that they're not going to work to that person's best interest. So that opens up a lot of loopholes that need to be closed for sure.
There are loopholes that, hopefully by July we have some answers to this, because we're all just kind of shooting, like everybody's firing right now. Yeah. And everybody's just shooting in the dark in hopes that they're going to be right in what they're saying. And like really, it's a mindless exercise, because you could be ready for everything, and then if something happens and it's not what you think it is, it was all that work for nothing. But you also have to be ready to be flexible.
Right. Yes. I mean, the market and the industry is pivoting for sure. It has pivoted. And we're still waiting on the new set of rules that we have to work within. And that's what's fueling all this anger and speculation and clickbait, articles and conversations.
I think it's more from real estate. I've seen more sky is falling stuff from real estate agents than any single person that's not in my little real estate sphere.
Right.
Like nobody else, everybody's like, oh, everything's fine. They don't even know.
Their world's going to go on uninterrupted.
They don't know that what's going on. They don't have it there. So another thought I had, buyers will typically go with the cheapest option unless they see some extra value in what you're offering. And you better make that value crystal fucking clear.
So I think it is people's tendencies to shop around for sure.
And why would they do? The only reason they would go with the cheapest is because they think they're getting the same for cheaper, right?
Right. If they think that an agent is an agent, well, number one, think again.
It's our job to make them think that way, because I think ultimately they think that it's easy and they think it's stupid. And like with the amount of stuff that's out there as far as TV shows and things like that, like HGTV and some Netflix shows and things like that have made our industry look like it's not really what it looks like. And I think people have this perception in their head of what it looks like to be a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And some people fit that mold. Most people don't, especially in New Jersey.
They think it's easy. They think that it's just like a piece of cake, that it's a walk in the park, that you work 1 hour a week.
You open my doors for me. I find the house. I send you the house.
Yeah.
You just get the key.
Yeah.
You get the lockbox code and you go with me. That's it.
And that's so far from the reality of it. And you know what? Any inexperienced person, if you get lucky in a transaction where nothing goes wrong, it is a piece of cake. But all the ones where something does go wrong, when you get into like litigious waters, or there's a massive defect found, or you're trying to understand what the rules of the contract are, there's so many. I mean, we've had so many transactions under our belt where we've seen some pretty nasty situations where either an inexperienced realtor would have just crumbled, or somebody trying to self-represent, like they probably would have lost everything had they not been able to pull from the experiences of not just experienced agent, but someone who's experienced at solving problems and putting out fires, overcoming hurdles, and getting everybody to work together. I can see countless times where deals fall apart because the two agents just go head to head with one another and just get into a pissing contest instead of working together to solve the
problem for both clients.
The problem is the same for both parties, because if that problem is not resolved, the transaction doesn't happen. Well, the buyer wants to buy, the seller wants to sell, and everybody doing their third-party job in the transaction also wants to get paid for doing the job. So everybody has the same common goal, yet more times than not, opposite parties will go against each other instead of working together to resolve the issue at hand, because it just becomes like a blame game. So these are things that are hypercritical, okay, to ensure a successful real estate transaction. Also, when you are the person I'm kind of going on a tangent here of like self-representation.
I'll go a rant here.
That's not really the direction that this is heading. But you'd mentioned self-representation. But if you get somebody that gets too emotionally wrapped up into a transaction, this could be a brand new agent that doesn't know any better. They could be their own worst enemy, and I've seen it where agents just can't get out of their own way fast enough. When you can put the emotions aside and think with your brain, and that doesn't mean to be a sociopath that doesn't care. No, this is caring to a higher level, to be smart enough to put feelings and emotions aside and think with clarity to make sure that you're making the proper decision, instead of just name calling and getting into a slugfest and again a pissing contest with someone on the other side. Being right doesn't fix the situation. Being a team player is the more likely solution.
I mean, that's always it really is, because everybody's on the same side in the transaction. Everybody wants it to close.
Right.
And the quicker everybody realizes that we're all on the same team, none of us win if we all don't win, and get to the the end goal. One thing I'm really excited about is I think that realtors have been fooled in the last, call it 5-6 years, into thinking that marketing themselves is talking about how good they are. And I think that what this is going to do, this is going to open up a chance to really prove that and show that you're going to give value to people, because they're not going to go with you because you say you're the best. They're not going to go with you now because they just know you.
They don't want the chest pounder.
I mean, like, maybe that person's great, but we're not going to call names out, but like, not every single person that is perceived as a high-level agent is a high-level person.
Right.
And as a high-level communicator of details. And if you're going to have the choice and you're going to pay, like, if you're paying the deal, you want a smart shopper is going to shop around.
Sure.
They don't pay for things they don't see the value in.
Right.
And that's when, if they don't see the value in you, they're going to go to these discount brokerages that open up. So increasing our value and being able to actually legitimately market is going to increase your value in buyers' eyes as they're going out there. And like I said, the top agents are not always what's there. We're going to really find out. I'm excited to see who separates, because I think it's going to open up a lot of marketing strategies for teams, for agents, and for people to really separate, because as much as this makes it seem like everybody's on the same field, it's going to be a different level. It's going to be a different playing field. In the industry, I do think a lot of agents leave.
For sure.
Like, I don't know what percent, like, if you had to give an honest percentage, what would you say?
I think we'll probably see about half the agents out of here.
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say 40, 60%. And somewhere that seems about right.
Right around the halfway mark.
We're going to lose some good ones too, because I think it's scary. Change is always scary.
And I think there's some people that just don't know how to change.
I hate change.
I know there's a lot of people that are petrified. Myself, anytime there's a massive shift, one thing, I mean, historically in any industry you can think of, there's always going to be some new opportunity that arises, and we don't really know quite exactly what that is yet, because we don't know what the new set of rules are. So I'm a little excited, if you can't tell, of the thought of
You're an excitable guy.
There's going to be some new opportunities that are new to everybody. Are you going to be one of those people that is ambitious enough and aware enough to find it and see that, to see that angle, to see what that new edge can be that we can offer, to see what that new window of opportunity is?
It's like, what is it? And we don't know what it is yet. And that's once we know,
the information hasn't dropped yet.
Exactly. Like, it's like just waiting, but I have all these different ideas cycling in my head. And I know a lot of people are thinking ahead, and any kind of change, like we'll talk about it again a little later, maybe a future episode of social media. TikTok might be going away. If that goes away and that's your only source, that can change a lot of things. So change is exciting, because that attention has to go somewhere else.
It's going to leave a vacuum.
It's going to go somewhere.
And you have to see, you have to find that space. Where is it?
So the buyers are still going to buy. It's who's going to take them and who's going to take care of them. So the last thing I want to kind of hit on with this is I think the brokerages and boards are going to need to make adjustments just as much as real estate agents, because brokerages have typically, there's some that have been around for a really long time, and then there's some that have started out as cloud-based. Their value add is going to have to be there for agents to stay anymore, because I don't know what percentage of agents would you say are like, five deals and less, buyers agents only. Like, it's a decent percentage. Those people probably going to go away, and the other people are going to need more sweeteners to change the offices. So I think that, and then boards, ultimately, a board has to have some value to it, right?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that say organizations like the NAR don't do anything, that their local boards don't do anything, and I think that sentiment is really running rampant these days.
It's turned into a wave.
Yeah. And it's nationwide. It's not. I'm not calling out any specific, realtor board. NAR is. You've got companies that are either leaving or threatening to leave NAR, because now with the decoupling of commissions, their thoughts are, well, what's the point in having MLS participation anymore? That use has gone out the window.
I'm all for it. Let's make everybody show some kind of value.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of people's hands in my pockets that don't do anything. Everybody in this industry, it's weird. Like, you'll have people that have their hands in your pockets. They don't do anything. They don't cultivate any business, yet they take some of your money. And people are okay with it.
Yeah. Well, it's pay to play.
Well, we're stop playing. Anything before we wrap this up? Anything you want to finish up on this note here?
Yeah, I think everybody needs to relax with their speculation, and the sky is falling.
No.
All these Chicken Littles need to just sit back, be patient, and see what the new set of rules are. You might be pleasantly surprised. We don't know yet. Previously, it was the sellers that were dictating what the buyer's agent commissions are. Now that opens up an opportunity itself, where now you're directly negotiating with the buyers versus a seller who you have no representation of.
No.
Just saying, there's a potential upside there.
The only thing guaranteed is changes are coming.
Yeah, they're here.
Well, in July, starting in July. So if we're still doing this by July, hopefully we'll be sponsored.
Maybe we could be professional podcasters.
No, that is not happening.
Underwear models?
That's not happening either. Not tame enough. So something else we could get into, another news topic, valuations on properties. So doing different valuations on properties for investors and different consultants. I have a couple thoughts on value of this for people. What goes into valuing properties for like a bank per se, or for your investors when you send out an investor list? How would somebody that doesn't know any different try to value things on their own?
An individual doing it.
Yeah, individual, and then what kind of stuff do you like as far as you giving the info out there?
So so from like a consumer perspective, if the consumer themselves is trying to do it, really they're only, when I've seen a person be like somewhat accurate, is they've sold homes in that area repeatedly because they've got a working history and a knowledge of that area, the neighborhood, the housing values, what finishes to put in a property to obtain what values. So experience in it. Us as realtors, our advantage that we have is that even if we've never been in a neighborhood, we can use mountains of data and a really powerful search feature in the MLS to properly value those houses. Now, and specifically talking about banks, with a bank listing, there's two values that I have to give. One is the as-is sale price, like what is the highest, most likely sale price for someone buying it completely as is if they do nothing to it. And then second is if renovations are made to it to bring it up to like a financeable condition, what's the value there, and also an estimated rehab cost for them to determine will there be a return if they spend the money to put the repairs into the house, will there be a return on that money? So that's kind of the same principle for when I'm valuing a house for an investor, is that, okay, here's the asking price, here's an estimated budget, here's what the return is going to be. Now, the experience factor is the more times you do this and you actually see the houses getting sold, I always want to check tape to see what was my actual sale price versus my anticipated sale price.
I wish there was a scoring system for this. Like you could just look up a scoring system and be like, what are Omar Din's numbers are?
Well, with the banks that I work for, I do get scored. And the retention of my contract depends on those scores. I've never lost a contract, so that'll tell you right there that my accuracy is as high as it can be.
You know what we should do? We should make those little NBA Jam t-shirts.
Yeah.
You remember those? You can have like accuracy score, like 10 out of 10. Dance moves 10 out of 10. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something funny. I can't think of it. There's something funny we can put in there as a 0 out of 10. So, but yeah, like I think the values, it's always interesting because like when people start to try to value houses, they're like, oh, I see that this house is listed at this.
Right.
And I like even the general public when they're looking at houses, like what would you say the broad view, like if somebody's going to value a house on Zillow, you want to have it like in the last 6 months. Make sure it's sold within like the last 6 months.
Sure.
Make sure it's somewhat similar to your house.
Right. It's got to be apples to apples.
Like if you have a rancher, make sure it's a rancher about the same or somewhat like a
same bedroom, bathroom count, square footage,
in the same ballpark,
same municipality. Normal suburban areas, it should be within a half-mile radius. If you get rural, you could expand that. And now, if you're in a city, you want to do like a real, like isolated, like a tenth of a mile.
The more dense the population, the closer you want.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. Because street to block to block in a city, things can be day and night.
You never know. And then as far as the people when they're looking, you want to see if it's trending up or trending down. Because
right.
if it was sold, in the 6 months ago and it's been slower since then,
right.
This is where you would be like, okay, it's probably a little less
sure.
than what went before. Whereas if it's a market like today, you look 6 months ago, you're like, all right, we're probably in the 5 to 10% higher than that.
Right.
Not based on listed value or any of that kind of stuff, but just what it's going to go for.
Right.
Just based strictly on availability and there not being much out there. And still, Open houses are still crazy. It's still very, very tough, especially in that $300,000 to $600,000 range.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like factors and variables that people don't think about. If there's like new shopping centers being built, that could be a good or a bad thing.
If it's in your backyard, it's bad.
Right.
But if it's across the street and
if
around
it's
the
10
corner,
minutes away, you don't hear the noise. That's a positive thing because
Yeah.
now all of your conveniences are a quick car ride away. Increase or decrease in crime can make a big difference. Jobs coming to or leaving an area. So knowing what's going on in any of these neighborhoods that you're marketing, it's not just house values, but there's so many other things that you do need to factor when doing this. Is the house right next to a quarry that has heavy machinery? Is there a school nearby? Again, that could be good or bad depending upon who you ask. So all of these things are variables. Solar panels being present or not can all have like massive impacts on value. So understanding how a lot of the less obvious things impact the value of the property is extremely important in the resale of it.
Absolutely. And it's always good. And I mean, that's why you always want to have a realtor too. But if you're just looking for yourself and you want to see like a real Zestimate for yourself.
Zestimates are like broken clocks. They're right twice a day.
All realtors hate Zestimates. But like they give you a range of where your house might go. But you really want to see what's sold there because you can't bank on those estimates.
Yeah, and they could be within 50, 100,000, and that's it's too far an error curve.
So, I am going to get to everybody's favorite section, the one with the logo. Questions that nobody asked us that people might have asked us this week. They didn't, but they might have.
No.
So, how's it hanging? If you're on a walkthrough and something comes up, what is the proper way to handle that at the closing table? Do I wait to get to the table and talk about it there? Do you call the agent ahead of time and deal with it in the car privately? Or do you just explode at the table?
You want to notify the listing agent as soon as possible.
And walk through the process. So like this is a real question that if you find something on your walkthrough that's not agreed upon, happens.
It happens.
I mean, things fall through the crack. It's not always on purpose. Sometimes not malicious, but sometimes things come up.
Something breaks because that's just when it broke.
I mean, sometimes it happens. Proper way to deal with it because it's an awkward conversation because at that point terms are set. Like everything's the train's leaving the station. You have to find a way to make it happy, make everybody happy, and not. Still represent your client. Like, still make sure that, hey, this is good. You don't necessarily want to hold the closing up, but it depends on what's going on.
You just made the most important statement is that everything that you do is is in the best interest of your client. Even getting a little more technical on it, the first thing, let's say it's something that involves like water or fire, God forbid. Like if something's running, like a pipe broke or something, the absolute first thing you want to do, if it's feasible and safe enough, is mitigate the problem. So if you have like a pipe that's like find the valve or find the water main to shut it off so it doesn't get any worse. That's just one example.
What if somebody left like a bunch of furniture in a house that wasn't agreed upon to leave?
So that happens. That's probably one of the most common things that happens. And
usually it's the annoying stuff that nobody wants to take, like a grandfather clock or something that's like a hard move. You're like, well, they'll probably appreciate my crap.
A desk, an ugly sofa. So that's honestly one of the most common occurrences. So there is a little bit of potential ball dropping from the listing agent and not explaining to the seller like what condition the property should be in. But this is the point of the walkthrough. Now, if at all possible, there's different schools of thoughts on this and pros and cons of this, is how far in advance you do that final walkthrough. If you do it the day before, well, you got a day to fix everything before closing. If you're doing it like minutes before, well, you've got minutes to rectify it. So in the case of like a bunch of furniture left behind, well, that's a pretty simple one to do. If the seller just can't get the stuff out, then you call a third party. The seller's got to pay for it to make sure that the house is being left in the condition that it's supposed to. It was empty, cleared out, broom swept condition. And nothing should be left behind unless it was agreed upon between the buyer and the seller. Because if the seller just leaves it because they just couldn't figure out what to do with it or didn't feel like it, which happens.
I don't want your grand piano stuck in my house when I'm trying to move in.
Yeah, like that person, it might be trash, that person. Now you've just put an extra cost on them. And that's, it's not going to be received well. So companies like 1-800-GOT-JUNK, there's all sorts of like trash removal companies that are out there. They're a dime a dozen.
A lot of realtors are going to be starting them up soon too.
Yeah.
So we'll watch out for that.
So these are always good options to have on hand. Like make sure that that's someone that you have in your arsenal of contacts to handle such a thing. There's other times where the seller's like, you know what, like I can come back tonight and get it. Whatever you do, just make sure that both sides are happy with it. They agree upon it.
Find out what your client wants, and then go from that. Because ultimately, if they're like, "I'm fine with it,"
yeah,
cool.
And sometimes, like it's not a big deal. I've got a dumpster at my brother's house. Like it's
But
so
make sure they're happy.
Exactly, and put it in writing, whatever it is. Anything. Conversations are hearsay.
Cool. Next question: how's it hanging? I am approved for a mortgage. Can I buy a mobile home with my mortgage?
If it is attached to a permanent foundation, you may be able to.
That seems like a non-answer.
It's a little more detailed than that. It depends on the company.
Does it have a VIN? I think does it have a VIN number? If it has a VIN number,
it could have had a VIN number. We've sold them that have VIN numbers, and if it's on a permanent foundation, it has to have a date of a fixture that would be on like a permit somewhere with the township if it was done properly. I believe they have to be manufactured 1976 or later, I believe.
So I think like mortgage companies are going to be the ones, because ultimately we control none of the money. So like with every mortgage company, if you're approved for a mortgage and you're looking at a mobile home, make sure that they can lend on a home that has a VIN or not a permanent fixture.
Well, every mobile home starts with a VIN. But they can be mounted to a permanent fixture. I know this because we've just closed one.
Gotcha.
Very recently.
Gotcha. But yeah, still consult with a mortgage because I want none of that responsibility.
This is all part of the learning process.
So, how's it hanging? Do you like me? Yes, no, or maybe?
You gonna mash that like button?
So maybe. If you like the button, do it. But also, if you do want to send us video, or not video, if you want to send us a question, we'll put you on, and we won't say that you asked for it, but we will put you on the questions that nobody asked us. And I'm not going to change the name of that because I like that. But there was one question that was asked on this, and the other two were made up or found on Macemook. So, things that piss you off this week, Omar. What do you got? Don't say nothing because there's got to be people that drive you crazy.
So, I had a hell of a morning this morning. And it wasn't anything that anybody did. So, my dog threw up in the middle of the night. That painful, like that gagging.
Did you hear it while it's happening?
Yes.
Did you get out of bed immediately, or were you like, this is a problem for 7 a.m.?
I jumped out of bed like I got stabbed with an adrenaline needle. And thankfully caught my dog and got her to right before anything came out, and got her to a tiled area.
Does she sleep in the bed with you guys too? Or
she does.
Oh no.
But she jumped down.
Okay.
And that was like the little precursor that there's about to be trouble here. And I don't even know what time it was. It was like maybe like 3 a.m, somewhere around there. She had actually gotten up twice. Once she jumped down, came back to bed, and then again. So I got like no sleep last night. So that happens. Get her cleaned up. Like then she's all fine. And now I'm just like exhausted because I usually get up like around 6, and I'm making breakfast and I'm making coffee, and I have a grind and brew coffee maker, so I put the whole beans in it and it grinds, and so I forget to put the coffee filter in there. So what that ended up doing is now I have coffee and grinds just like spilling everywhere, all over the counter, and I'm like, all I want is a cup of coffee, and I just can't have this cup of coffee.
That's a nightmare.
It is. And then it's like I'm cooking eggs. Like now I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna burn my breakfast. My coffee's over, and I'm just like, what else is gonna go wrong? And then after it was done, I go upstairs and I'm talking to my wife, telling her like what happened, in making breakfast. And I'm like, you know what? As easy as it was for me to just like fly off the handle and get mad, I'm like, you know what? I have the rest of the day to have a better day, and I have the resources and the health and the wherewithal to address all these things that happen. It's like, I got the dog cleaned up. She's fine. She's healthy. Got the coffee cleaned up. Like, it's fine. It's healthy. I'm like, I'm still healthy. I've got like my full mental capacity. And it just, I just took a second to reflect. I'm like, you know what? A younger me, like, I would have been just angry all day long. And this time I'm like, you know what? It sucked, but like, there's worse things going on in other people's lives.
Would have been great if at that point you're like, you know what? Everything's good. And your dog turned around and like, bleh, and spewed up behind you and you stepped in it with your socks. That'll really set it off for the day. So things driving me crazy this week. Other brokerages that will use call farms to reach out to you as an agent and say that somebody really wants to talk to you.
It's the same script. They're all probably hiring the exact same call center.
So they call. They're like, hey, such and such is really interested in your stuff. Are you still doing real estate? They really want to talk to you. It's like, they don't, because they put you on the phone to try to schedule an appointment for me to talk to them. If they really wanted to talk to me, they would talk to me. And they don't really want to talk to me. You know why? Because they don't know who I am.
No.
They just look at the name and they're trying to recruit. And I think it's the most disingenuous way that they will do it. And actually, I have a list that I'm not going to go to any of these people that do that on the call farm, because I think it's a disingenuous way to start a conversation with somebody.
No, you left out the best part, though. It was like, when you get one of these calls, like, call comes in, hello, silence.
Beep, the beep, 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 beep.
Silence. Like, hello. I usually get about like 2-3
this
hellos.
Omar?
Yeah. It's like, hello, is this, and
when you answer and you say, is this, that's an automatic spot, like you don't know who it is.
I'm
it's
already
like,
on the defensive.
Like, I have to defend that I am Tom, or like you have to defend your own. Like, no, not the way it works. If you really want to call, seriously, look at your information. Be like, hey, what do you honestly think of where you're at right now? Do you think it's giving you everything you want? And ask the real questions of if it's going to work for them, because not everybody is working for everybody. But the people that do that, you're on my list. I don't know how often it works. I don't know if it's something that actually does work, but if you're getting those kind of people, they're probably going to be out of the business by July, and they're probably going to become mortgage reps. And
they're going to be working in an offshore call center.
Maybe the mortgage reps, and then the mortgage reps are going to be able to...
I have an idea. We should open up one of these call centers with
like an authentic call center?
Yeah, like that respond faster. You're on like true copper lines, so you don't have that beep and that long silence.
Do they have copper lines anymore?
They do.
I mean, I was just going to use cell phones. But like, I would love to, actually, the authentic call.
Right.
Some other cool name. Or that's not a cool name, but... and then, tying things up for the week, we have my favorite, dad joke of the week.
I love dad jokes.
Dad jokes are the best. And actually, we should just make this whole podcast dad jokes, because every week when you look at the numbers, it only spikes up here because I write it in the little section in the information. So, lay it on me. What you got?
So, a buddy of mine was showing me his tool shed, and he's showing me around, and he points, he said, that's my step ladder. And I'm like, huh. And he goes, well, I never knew my real ladder.
So, okay, like, should we rate these jokes after we're done?
No.
Okay, cool.
Because they're all terrible.
They're all bad.
Yeah.
So, I was doing a walk this week around Maple Shade.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that 100% of the lawn gnomes in Maple Shade have red hats?
No.
It's a little gnome fact. All right, cool. We're over week 6. See you next week.
Bye.